Before diving into Dragon Age Veilguard, it's important to understand the lore that drives the conflict. The Veil, a magical barrier keeping the world of Thedas safe from the Fade, is weakening, and powerful factions are on the move. Whether they're aiming to protect or exploit this fragile balance, their actions will shape the future. To get a grasp of the world you'll be stepping into, let's explore the key lore elements that will guide your choices and shape the epic conflict to come. The Veil is a metaphysical barrier separating the physical world from the Fade, a realm inhabited by spirits, demons, and dreamscapes. Created by Solus, the Dread Wolf, to imprison the Evanuris, the Veil has shaped the world in profound ways. Magic and the nature of existence itself in Thedas are closely linked to this divide. Though largely imperceptible to most mortals, the Veil serves as a protective barrier, preventing the raw chaos of the Fade from spilling into the material world. The Veil's fragility is one of the central conflicts in Dragon Age. With each weakening or tear, spirits can cross over into the waking world, causing significant consequences. In Dragon Age Veilguard, this precarious balance threatens to unravel, making the Veil and its integrity the focus of both the narrative and our choices. Before the Veil's creation, the world was vastly different. The ancient Elven Empire ruled over Thedas, and their power was unparalleled. The elves were immortal, connected deeply to the Fade, and guided by their gods, the Evanuris. These gods were initially revered as wise and powerful leaders, but their true nature was much darker. The betrayal of the Dread Wolf, Fen'Harel, is a pivotal moment in the history of Thedas. Solus, a rebel against the Evanuris, believed that they were tyrannical, using their power to enslave not only the Elven people, but also the spirits of the Fade. In a radical act to free both, Solus created the Veil, cutting off the Elven gods from Thedas and severing the elves' connection to their immortality and magic. Solus' decision to create the Veil had cataclysmic consequences for the elves. Their immortality faded, their empire crumbled, and they were soon subjugated by other races. This lore is central to understanding Solus' motivations throughout the series, particularly in Inquisition, where he is revealed to be planning the restoration of the ancient world by tearing down the Veil. The Evanuris, as mentioned previously, were once revered as gods by the ancient elves of Thedas, and were powerful and cunning beings who ruled over their people with an iron grip. Often depicted as deities, their influence permeated every aspect of Elven life, from culture to governance. However, the truth behind their divinity was far more sinister. They were not benevolent gods, but tyrants who wielded immense magical power, shaping the world to their will. The most notorious of these figures was Mythal, a figure of vengeance and justice, and Elgar'nan, the god of vengeance. The Evanuris' downfall came at the hands of Solus, the Dread Wolf, who saw their oppressive reign for what it truly was. In a bid to end their tyranny and protect the Elven people, Solus created the Veil, separating Thedas from the Fade and imprisoning the Evanuris within it. This act shattered the Elven Empire and erased much of their culture, but it also freed the world from the rule of these so-called gods. In the most recent trailer, we see the protagonist meddling with Solus' ritual lead to the unintended escape of the Evanuris from their ancient prison. This not only sets up a conflict with these dangerous beings, but may also force players into a short-term alliance with Solus himself. With the Evanuris unleashed, Thedas faces an unprecedented threat, and Solus, set up as the antagonist, could become a temporary ally, adding depth to gameplay decisions and shaping the player's relationships with other factions. To find out more about the Evanuris and Solus' origins, you can also watch my other video on this channel, which I'll have linked at the end of this one. The Eluvians are ancient elven mirrors that form a vast interdimensional network capable of transporting users across great distances. Originally created by the ancient elves, these magical devices were used as a means of swift and covert travel. Eluvians are more than just mirrors. They are gateways that connect hidden pathways through the Fade, bypassing the need to physically traverse the world. The Eluvians were key to the dominance of the ancient Elven Empire, allowing them to maintain control over vast territories. The knowledge of how to use and control the Eluvians was lost following the fall of the Empire, but fragments of this network have resurfaced in recent history. In Dragon Age Inquisition, Morrigan and Solas each play roles in uncovering the Eluvian secrets. The network, however, is unstable, and some of the mirrors are damaged or lead to unknown, dangerous locations within the Fade. In Veilguard, the Eluvian Network may once again become a significant asset, particularly as the Veil weakens. Control over these ancient pathways could provide strategic advantages, allowing factions to move freely or uncover hidden knowledge of the ancient elves. However, the danger of using Eluvians remains high, as the unpredictability of the network means players could find themselves lost in the Fade or worse. The Eluvians represent both a tool of ancient power and a lingering mystery, with their true potential and risk yet to be fully understood. The Fade is a reflection of consciousness, a realm composed of raw emotion, dreams, and magic. It is home to spirits, entities formed from aspects of reality like wisdom, valor, and compassion, and demons, corrupted versions of spirits born from negative emotions like fear, pride, and desire. The Fade is also the source of magic in Thedas. Mages tap into its power to perform their craft. For most mortals, the Fade can only be accessed through dreams. However, mages, particularly those with strong abilities, have the unique ability to consciously navigate the Fade. This connection is a double-edged sword, as it also leaves them vulnerable to possession by demons. In the Dragon Age series, the manipulation of the Fade is central to both the plot and the gameplay, as many conflicts revolve around controlling its influence on Thedas. The significance of the Fade in Veilguard is tied to the Veil itself. As the Veil weakens, the barriers between Thedas and the Fade begin to blur, allowing spirits and demons to cross over more freely. This creates a world where reality and dreams intermix, and controlling the consequences of this merging become a primary challenge. The Tevinter Imperium is one of the oldest and most powerful human nations in Thedas, founded by a group of magisters who wielded immense magical power. Tevinter is a magiocracy, meaning its leaders are mages who have near complete control over society. The Imperium's history is closely tied to the manipulation of the Fade and its inhabitants, as its ruling class has long used blood magic and other dangerous arcane practices to maintain their dominance. Tevinter's most infamous historical event was the breach of the Golden City in the Fade. Legend holds that a group of magisters, known as the Magisters Sidereal, attempted to enter the city, believed to be the home of the Maker. Their actions corrupted the city, turning it into the Black City, and unleashed the Blight upon the world. This act is considered one of the greatest sins in Thedas' history, and contributed to the long-standing distrust of mages. Despite its dark history, Tevinter remains a central force in Thedas, both feared and revered for its magical prowess. The Imperium is also one of the few places where mages are openly respected and can practice their craft without the oppressive control seen in nations like Orlais and Ferelden. In Dragon Age Veilguard, Tevinter will likely play a crucial role as a hub of magical knowledge and a possible ally or enemy, depending on our choices. Several factions will be at the center of Dragon Age Veilguard, each with their own stakes in the conflicts surrounding the Veil. As a magocracy, the Tevinter Imperium is a nation built on magical power, where mages rule, and magic is not just accepted, but revered. Their leaders, known as magisters, will undoubtedly have strong opinions about the fate of the Veil. Depending on how events unfold, Tevinter could either align with those seeking to maintain the Veil's integrity, or leverage its weakening for their own gain. Given their long history of meddling with the Fade and their use of dangerous magics, Tevinter represents one of the more unpredictable factions in Veilguard. Their hunger for power, often at the expense of the natural balance of magic, positions them as a faction that could either strengthen or destabilize the world, depending on how they manipulate events surrounding the Veil. In Veilguard, the Tevinter Imperium could play the role of aggressor, seeking to harness the unraveling of the Veil to consolidate its power further, or even to return to its former glory as the most dominant force in Thedas. We will likely have to navigate complex alliances and determine whether Tevinter's ambitions align with the preservation of the world or the ushering in of even greater chaos. The Qunari, an organized militaristic society guided by the rigid philosophy of the Qun, see magic as an inherently dangerous force that must be controlled. Their approach to mages, whom they call Sarabas, meaning dangerous thing, is harsh and strictly regulated. In their view, magic represents chaos and unpredictability, and as such, the Qunari work to suppress it as much as possible. The Qunari are not strangers to conflict with the Tevinter Imperium. For centuries, the two nations have clashed over land, philosophy, and the use of magic. In Veilguard, the Qunari's focus will likely be on controlling or even eliminating the threat posed by the weakening of the Veil. They may view the destabilization of the Veil as an opportunity to strike against Tevinter or impose their will on other nations. Their disdain for unchecked magic means they are unlikely to support any faction looking to exploit the Fade. Instead, the Qunari may advocate for a strict militaristic solution to seal or even reinforce the Veil, ensuring that the world remains protected from the dangers of the Fade. The Grey Wardens are an ancient order with one mission: to combat the Darkspawn and end the blights that threaten all of Thedas. Though their focus is usually on the Darkspawn and the archdemons that lead them, the weakening of the Veil could bring them into the forefront of the conflict in Veilguard. The Warden's connection to the Fade through their tainted blood gives them a unique perspective on the dangers posed by the collapse of the barrier between Thedas and the Fade. In past Dragon Age games, the Grey Wardens have played pivotal roles during crises, especially during blights. In Veilguard, they could be key players once again, seeing the weakening Veil as a threat not only to Thedas, but also as something that could potentially awaken a new blight. The Veil's collapse could allow Darkspawn to surge forth from the deep roads, or even allow an archdemon to exploit the situation. The Grey Wardens, however, are not without controversy. Their willingness to use extreme measures, such as the joining or the use of blood magic, may put them at odds with other factions. As a result, we may need to decide whether the Warden's methods are justified in the face of such an existential threat. The Inquisition, formed during the events of Dragon Age Inquisition, was initially created to restore order during the Breach, another crisis involving the Fade. Led by the Inquisitor, this organization has since been a key force in maintaining stability in Thedas. While the Inquisition may no longer be the global power it once was, its influence remains significant, especially when it comes to matters of the Fade and the Veil. In Veilguard, the remnants of the Inquisition will likely continue to play a central role, particularly given their history with Solus and the Fade. The Inquisitor's personal connection to Solus and the events of Trespasser sets the stage for a continuation of that storyline. Depending on our choices in previous games, the Inquisition could either align with factions trying to preserve the Veil, or pursue more drastic measures to confront Solus directly. Their knowledge of the Fade and prior experience with the Breach make them uniquely suited to handle the challenges presented by the weakening of the Veil. Whether the Inquisition serves as an ally or a competitor in Veilguard will likely depend on our choices and how they choose to engage with the remnants of this once great power. As Dragon Age Veilguard approaches, it is clear that the fate of the Veil will be the central conflict driving the narrative. Each faction, Tevinter, the Qunari, the Grey Wardens, and the Inquisition, has its own motivations and perspectives on how the world should handle the Veil's potential collapse. Whether through cooperation or conflict, these factions will shape the outcome of Veilguard, with players having to decide who to ally with and what future they want for Thedas. The crumbling Veil represents both an existential threat and an opportunity for those seeking power. Our choices will define whether Thedas stands united against the impending catastrophe, or whether internal strife and ambition will tear the world apart. Ultimately, the decision to preserve, destroy, or manipulate the Veil will have far-reaching consequences for the entire world, as well as the fate of its inhabitants. In Veilguard, you will be thrust into a world on the edge of disaster, where alliances are fragile and the Veil's instability threatens the very fabric of reality. Whether you side with the Tevinter Imperium's ambition, the Qunari's discipline, the Grey Warden's duty, or the Inquisition's expertise, one thing is certain: the fate of Thedas rests in your hands.